Okay, this is my second time recording this video because the audio got fucked up somehow, so that really pissed me off. But to be honest, maybe it's for the best because I think I kind of missed. I wanted to get like a little more into some of the things that I was talking about. But basically, the title of this video is going to be oh, I built this algorithm brick by brick, right? Because we're all familiar with like this term, right? I shouldn't assume that we are all familiar with this term, but actually, because this conversation is I was kind of inspired by this study, I guess that our professor of mine introduced to me at one point was like basically saying that studies on our generation have kind of shown that we are the most algorithmically conscious generation as of late, which makes sense. Like, I mean, obviously, like as the progression of technology, the progression of social media, it's like that's something that we were exposed to at a younger age. We have a higher awareness of it and more of advantage, right? I mean, this is why narratives like online narratives, like even just mainstream media, like the news, is so much more exerts so much more influence over older generations, right? Like there's much less questioning of algorithm and like how are you receiving this media, where are you receiving it, why are you receiving it, like what is the motivation behind it, right? Like there's a very technocratic understanding of like mass media and just the online space that is incorrect, right? That it is truly like on the whole good, right? That it is singularly unbiased and that there's no filtering that goes on behind the scenes of like these media sites and like how information gets disseminated online. Right, like it's just the thought to question that is just more, it comes more naturally to us, I guess. But like it's also like it really is a very valuable tool for us to have, especially in like when we think about like internet literacy. I think this is a genuine problem, at least for people our age, especially, or something that people need to be more aware of. Is just the ability to read online spaces and to read algorithms for the intent that they are attempting to, draw something out of you. I mean, on the most fundamental level, right? At any algorithm is any algorithmic service, any kind of filtering is really just attempting to satisfy your attention, right? To keep you consuming, and to also just like interpret your desires, pretty much. Like it's a means of control, basically. It's a means of wanting to designate experience, and I think we need to start to recognize that like the time that we spend online has become a form of property, essentially. Like if you want to look at this from a capitalist and like a tech feudalist lens, right? When I've heard it said a lot that like America in particular, right, is approaching this level as humanity, are increasingly more online, and companies, data companies especially, like Tesla, like Facebook, like Meta, continue to harvest so much of our information and um, put it into compute it into this aggregate of like better capturing our attention, better directing our online usage, right? It's like it really comes down to like forms of ownership. Like when we think about domain and when we think about web page as property, like the actual space on the screen when you look, right? Like you can't find this. I mean, you definitely can, but like on the whole, it is almost impossible to find a free, accessible site that the space is not dominated by advertising, right? Because that's just capitalism. Um, you know, insists that it must somehow make money, right? It must somehow be benefiting. So I think that we need to question, when there is free public access to things, who is controlling the algorithm, who is disseminating this information, who has control over a web page, over a domain, right? That is literal material property. And the attention that you have, the time that you spend, the data that you willingly provide to sites that you spend time on, or apps and things that you spend the most attention towards or put the most activity towards, that is where your material labor is going. Like your attention is your labor. That is your material advantage that you have over tech feudalist companies. Like, because as these monopolies progress and as they purchase more and more online space, And like ownership really just becomes like, I mean, you could even see this in terms of like streaming, right? It just comes down to who owns what movies, and where does that direct your attention? It's the same, like who owns what sites, and where does that direct your attention? Like Amazon, for example, has, the majority of like purchasing and shipping and like consumerist data, whereas like things like Meta is very much like Instagram and like activity in terms of like virality. It's all different forms of data harvesting about your way of life, right? And this is the danger about like user term agreements and the abuse of data collection that just really goes on without our consent entirely. But that's not the end of the story, because we obviously do have the power and the ability to, well, one, recognize it. That's the first step in terms of being algorithmically conscious, and then two, recognizing that these are at the end of the day just tools. Recognizing that they serve a function with a goal, and that once we understand that, we can kind of begin to subvert these systems and the way that they function out of an awareness of them, basically. And I think this is also an issue in terms of our perspective on like AI. I think that this notion of like tech or technology and like artificial intelligence as inherently or necessarily perfect or necessarily moral, right, and not just an aggregate of everything that has come before, and like a continuation, a repetition of spewing of just the world as it is, and the assumption that nothing should change, which I don't think is good. But again, just that the AI are just they're just algorithms, right? They're algorithms trained to achieve a specific purpose, and that purpose 99% of the time is to think for you, right? It's to do for you, perform for you. It's not so much that AI, right? Because the United States is the only place that AI is advertised. It's the only place that it is presented as a product, right? Because it's not replacing thinking, it's replacing action. It's replacing what you can do on a fundamental level that you could actually just outsource. Oh yeah, like decide where to go. It's not about changing. It's not about changing like it's not about changing how you think. It's about changing what you think and directing that. And like the more that you feed into the homologous view of mainstream media, of the mainstream internet, and the more that you give into that and ask of artificial intelligence to ask generatively to direct you in some way, it's just a funneling. It's just funneling upward into the singular like mainstream view of reality, a concept of the internet as something that is static and unchanged, when in reality that's not true. Like growth is necessary to life, necessary to anything, like, and that requires a degree of subversiveness, right? A degree of randomness, a degree of absurdity, a little bit of all that, right? And so this is why I think that being niche, right? I know this is like, it's ironic, because I mean it's already the idea of the word niche is already fetishized like so greatly within like internet culture, and like needing to be niche, and oh god, like it becomes performative, right? But at the same time, on the most fundamental level, that is the most subversive way that we can be active on the internet, is in seeking counter narratives and seeking counterculture events or fixations, or in an absurd sort of way that becomes subversive to the mainstream, and then are then capable and culpable of changing it. And when we think too in terms of like localized politics, on like, well, like internet usage for the sake and purely for the sake of the benefit of your immediate community. And it's like that is really that's the premonition of social media, right? It's like, oh yeah, to connect with your loved ones. But then if obviously the ulterior motive is just attention harvesting at the end of the day. And so being able to recognize that and still consciously choose to funnel your attention and your activity on Instagram or on social media towards community work, right? And benefiting like specific, like more niche. I think that the key, especially with creation, if you are a creator or if you are being active in any sense, it is recognizing your audience, recognizing the audience that you attain to. And if we are constantly holding ourselves up to a mainstream standard, we're giving in. Like we're saying like, AI, please fuck me in the ass, like that ass. Pardon my language, but And I've heard it said by I think it was like a Kenyan teacher. Essentially his words, not mine. AI will replace everybody who uses it. Recognizing that like the more that you allow a tool to replace and in like influence your thinking, the better you're training it to be you essentially and to replace you, because the more random and the more authentic you can curate your internet experience and curate your decisions online as coming and stemming directly from you and something that is not simply just derivative of the mainstream, the less predictable you are to an algorithm. No, number one, and number two, therefore, the less controllable you are in a larger mass media sense, because we all ultimately are susceptible to mass media images. We all are susceptible to propaganda. It's true. But like awareness is the first step. Awareness is the first step, and once you are able to recognize like the way that you can brandish the algorithm, right, as a tool to be used to serve you ultimately, and not tech feudalists, and brandishing your attention, right, recognizing the power of your attention, that is literally the reclamation of your labor, of your material value, right, as an individual. It's the reclaiming of that, and then the redirection of that to ultimately serve yourself, and to be just media literate, like to be able to go onto a site and to navigate it with an understanding of its purpose, and what that can reveal. I think maybe this is a poor example, but I'll say like a Spotify algorithm. Like if you like, because I think music is a good example here, because Spotify and like Apple, like these are two sites with like distinctive languages, right, in terms of algorithm, where it's like I'm not familiar with Apple Music in any capacity, right? But like based on my experience, based on the literacy and the tool of the Spotify algorithm that I have, it's like I can almost sort of tell the relationship that different types of people have with music, right, and with their taste, with aesthetics, online, based on like basically their playlist, right, basically their listening habits and the songs that they are introduced to, how the transmission of information, the transmission of that occurs through these algorithms. It's like recognizing it actually gives you a lot of really helpful insights into the kinds of people that you can interact with, because it's like uh, to the extent that taste is politic, to the extent that your taste is a reflection of what it is that you who it is that you are, um and at least to the question of aesthetics, right, and I mean it's kind of a endless back and forth, that like these things are a ways of life. These things are ways of life above all else. And it's like, to the extent that you can and cannot control them, it's like they will also end up revealing a lot more to you about yourself and your own activity, as they will to a tech company, right? And to a guy like Elon Musk. So, why wait? Like, start figuring it out today. Like, start reading it now, because the better you can understand your digital footprint, right, the more you will be able to start to shape it and actually be conscious of the spaces and the time that you spend online. So yeah, that's all.